Hey, Sun Devils, this is Mr. Moore with our Week 19 notes. This is the beginning of second semester, and this semester we are focusing in on economics. During the first semester, all we did is study government. And now the government does affect the economy, but we really focused on the powers of government, the branches of government, the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. And of course, we focused in on the Bill of Rights and our role, our place as a citizen of the United States in our government. And of course, to wrap it all up, we looked at some comparative governments, looking at how governments function in different countries around the world. This semester, we are focusing on economics, and there's truly nothing that impacts our world more than money and economics and the economy. In fact, while I'm recording this here in 2021, there's a lot of people who are nervous about the coronavirus and the impact of this pandemic. But I think people are even more concerned about the economy and how this is impacting economics, people's jobs and unemployment, and not being able to go to school or participate in normal activities, normal in air quotes here. So there's a ton of things that have to be considered in our world. And again, there's nothing more significant than economics. And so this semester, we're going to focus in on economics. And of course, we're kind of just going to do an introduction here, try to lay out some of the groundwork and kind of pave the path to where we're going to go in this class throughout this semester. So I hope you take active notes, good notes, and you dive in with ambition and gusto into this class. I promise to provide for you the best experience possible. And so let's get into it. In the economics class, each week when I start off my notes, I'm going to give you some personal lessons that I've learned. One of the things that we're going to do in this class is try to help you with some financial literacy, personal money management, if you will. We're not just going to talk about GDP and supply and demand. We're also going to try to hone in on you becoming an adult and you learning some of the lessons that are necessary to manage your money well, or else you won't have a functioning life. It's impossible to have a family and a home and a car that works unless you have a decent job. But it's not just how much money you make, it's also how you spend money. I have a guy that I met one time. He was a farmer, and he was talking to me as I was about ready to graduate from high school. And I still remember the lessons that he taught me. He sat me down and he said, it doesn't matter how much you make, it matters how much you spend. That's going to determine your happiness in life more than anything. He said, my wife and I, we have this farm home, and I'd seen his home, and it was a nice house. And he's like, man, we always have food on the table. We always have cars that work, and we're happy, but we don't make very much. And he kind of told me how much money they made. And he says, you know what? I got a friend who works as an airline pilot and makes six figures. And he's got tons of money, and he's always broke, and he's always in financial trouble. How is it possible that I make 1/3 of what he does and we're totally fine? And yet he makes 3 times as much money, but he's always in financial trouble. And that destroyed his marriage and his family. I mean, if you're in financial trouble, it can wreck everything. So I hope that throughout this class, I can provide for you some stories and information personal that will help you to see some financial wisdom so you don't have to make the same mistakes. I remember when I was a kid, my first job was working on a farm. I was born in Colorado, and I remember working on a farm when I was a kid, and I was so grateful that my dad taught me how to work when I was a kid. So your work ethic might have more to do with you being successful than how smart you are. That's something I believe is true economically. But again, it's not always working harder. Sometimes you got to work smarter, but you got to have that work ethic, or you're not going to be able to keep jobs. I mean, my first job was working for donuts. Like my dad, I was a kid, and my dad said, hey, if you come help milk the cows and do chores on Saturday when you're not in school, He'd pay me in donuts, and then he'd give me a little bit of money so I could save up for some cowboy boots. And I was pretty excited to wear those to church and out on the farm, and I thought they were great. And so sometimes parents teach us good lessons by giving us allowance and helping us to pay for things when we're kids. And some parents kind of cripple us. There are some parents who just give their kids whatever they want and kind of spoil them, and then they don't learn those life lessons, the value of hard work, saving money, not getting what you want right away. I mean, those are valuable lessons. Maybe you got bad lessons when you were a kid and you don't understand work ethics. You don't understand what the value of money or what it means to work a solid day's life. But those are things you can correct in the future with your own children and as you grow up to become an adult. This is a senior class. Like it or not, you're going to be moving into the adult world. And just turning 18 doesn't make you an adult. You've got to become responsible. I learned other lessons when I grew up in Nebraska, and my dad started his own business. It was a bike shop. We sold skateboards and BMX bikes and repaired bikes. And so I worked at the bike shop. And again, my dad would pay me some money. And I learned what it meant to start your own business. So even though I'm a school teacher, I have had some experience in that entrepreneurial, like building a business up from scratch. I learned that when I was a kid from my dad. And it was powerful, to learn some of those lessons. I worked on farms, worked out in the bean fields. Guys would hire us to work on farms in Nebraska, detasseling corn or, cutting cane in the bean fields. So again, I learned that value of hard work and what money means because I had to work for it. And I think that's one of those things. Some of you guys have had jobs and you understand that, and some of you haven't. You're just given everything. You're provided your meals at your house. You turn the water on and it works, or the electricity, and you don't have to pay those bills, but you're going to get a crash course in that in the next few months when you move out. And if you don't move out, you should get out of your parents' house and live your own life. I also learned hard experiences that I didn't have to go through, but my parents did. My dad and my mom are like the hardest workers I've ever known. My dad, uh, he got his master's degree from the University of Nebraska in Lincoln, and he worked at Southeast Community College in Beatrice and Fairbury. Those were like little towns in Nebraska. And he worked hard, but still, the economy of the small town that we lived in started to dissipate to the point where they closed the college. And so it was hard times for my family. We had some hard times financially, and it wasn't my parents' fault. But when they closed the community college, we had to move somewhere else in Nebraska. And we had bought this house in a town, but the economy collapsed. And then the house was worth nothing. And we're talking about big money. So it's interesting. Right here in Apple Valley is another experience. There are some people who bought their house for like 300,000, but then the economy dropped in say like 2008. And so the house they bought for 300,000 and they still owe money on 300,000, but now the value of their house is down to 100,000. That means that they're still living in the same house, but the value dropped from 300,000 where they bought it to 100,000. That really happens right here in Apple Valley. And if you try to sell your house but it's only worth 100,000, that means you could lose that 200,000. That could put you in bankruptcy. It could cause serious problems. So it's not just the money you earn at a job. It has a lot to do with the economy around you, things that are out of your control. So if you buy a house here in Apple Valley, and maybe some of you are like, nah, I'm going to get out of here. I don't even want to be around here. But you have to kind of pay attention to the health of the economy in general. And a good indicator of that is house prices. When house prices are going up, generally speaking, okay, all we can do is speak about generalities, but that means the economy is going up and doing good, and it's being healthy. And some people can buy a house at 100,000, and a couple of years later, it's worth 300,000. That means that you sold your house, you could have made 200,000 without doing anything. Well, except for taking the risk, right? There's always risk. Where there is greater risk, there is greater rewards, or there could be huge disaster. And so that's the kind of story that I'm trying to paint for you. Again, I had a lot of farming experiences growing up. I also lived in Utah for a few years. I went to Utah State University. That's where I got my bachelor's degree in social studies teaching. That was my major, and I worked hauling pipe and hauling hay on farms in Utah, and it taught me again that value of working. So when I was in high school, I would work hard in the summer and save up enough money so that when I was in high school, I could play football. I was on the wrestling team. I did theater, did the choir. I did all kinds of cool stuff when I was in high school. But then I could pay for gas and taking girls out on dates and all the stuff you want to do, going to concerts or, buying the latest music or whatever. But I didn't have to work while I was in school because it can be difficult to hold a job and go to school at the same time. But those are some of the things. Each week, I'm going to take 5 or 10 minutes and just give you a little personal experience that affects the economy and try to teach you some economics with some personal stories. And so that's the first lesson. So I'm going to look for some of those notes each week when you turn them in, some of the personal stories, just so I know you're hearing me and you're getting something out of this. There's two types of economic study. So as we study economics and how economies function and work, sometimes we study things from the macroeconomic point of view. And that's kind of studying the large picture, right? The study of the larger economy as a whole and the economic factors like government spending, inflation, right? Hope you guys know what inflation is. When the value of money decreases or items become more expensive over time. If you hear your grandpa say, "Hey, I remember when a phone call only cost 10 cents," and you're like, "A phone call? Like, what are you talking about?" And he's like, "The payphone, you'd put a dime in and you can make a call." And you're like, "What is even a phone booth, Grandpa? I don't even remember that." So things change over time and the value of things, I remember, here's a story, it means I'm old. I remember when I could buy a full-size candy bar for a quarter. You go to a store now and it's like $1. And that's you go to the convenience store, it could be like $1.50 for just like a full size candy bar. I remember buying those for a quarter. And so sometimes older generation starts to think, man, everything's getting so expensive. But then again, we're making more money than our past generations did. But do we really have more buying power? Just because I have more money doesn't mean I have more buying power because things are more expensive. So that's kind of stuff we're going to be looking at in an economics class. We're going to look at unemployment rates, international trade. That's macroeconomics. And we'll definitely do some of that. But where we're going to start in this class is more with microeconomics, the study of small economic units like a person, me. I have money every month. I have a job, so I have money and I get to choose how to spend that money. I have to make a car payment. I have to pay for insurance. I've got to pay the water bill or I can't flush the toilet. I've got to go to Costco to get food. Why do I go to Costco? Because I can buy more at a cheaper rate and I got kids, right? So individuals are making choices, and what determines why we make those economic choices? This is microeconomics. So we are within microeconomics, we are going to talk about personal finance, money management, budgeting. We are going to do a lot of practical things, especially right at the beginning, because ultimately you're getting ready to go out into the real world and we want you to function. Like, I know this might sound silly, but if you think about that Beatles song, "All you need is love," da, 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 it's not true. You could fall in love with somebody, but your love, your relationship will fall apart if you cannot manage money. And you might say, what does love have to do with money? Trust me, any person that's been married, one of the number one reasons why people fight when they're married or end up getting divorced is over money problems. And you might think, well, I'm not going to ever get married. Fine, I don't care. But if you ever want to have a functioning relationship with anybody, you've got to know how to manage your money or you will fail. Your relationship will fail. Money causes friction if it's not used properly. Because money is just paper, but it represents our buying power, it represents our spending habits. It is really a representation of who we are and what we care about. And so, in a weird way, this economics class is going to be more like a psychology class than anything else, because we're going to be looking at why people make certain choices, how people and businesses make decisions. That's what economics is all about. That's why it's not a math class. It's a social science class, because we're looking at human beings and what makes us choose things. And why do we respond certain ways to choices that are provided for us? People respond to incentives in predictable ways. And so that's really what this class is all about. Remember, there's two ways to study economics. There's microeconomics, individual choices, or even household choices, or even like a single business. Why is it marketing this way? Why is it producing this? Why did they decide to change that? Why are those choices being made? Economic behavior. And then we're going to look at macroeconomics, the bigger picture, GDP, GNP. Like, how can we rate what country is the richest? How do we determine the size of an economy? And how do certain countries focus in and specialize in certain things? That's macroeconomics versus microeconomics. And again, we're all interconnected. I remember I did a play when I was in high school called Working, and it was one of the most fascinating, musical plays I've ever experienced, because it showed every single person in the community and the different jobs they had and how they ended up interrelating. And so it was a fascinating, from the global economics to how the government interferes or engages with the economy. The government is not the economy. They're two separate things, but sometimes they cross over, right? Like right now, during this pandemic, as I'm recording this in 2021, the government's sending out stimulus checks, right, to try to stimulate the economy. Right? They figure if people have money, then they'll be able to pay bills and things will settle in, right? And even though there might be some job loss and some problems with the pandemic, they're trying to stimulate the economy. Where are they getting that money from? The government doesn't have any money, but yet they're the ones that produce the money, right? They're the ones that actually print it off. I went with my kids to the Federal Reserve Building in Atlanta, Georgia, and we got to see, where they made money, literally. But if they put too much money into the economy, then the value of the money can drop. These are the kind of things that we want to study. From the personal decisions you're making with your money. You get $20. What do? Do you save it? Do you spend it? Do you invest it? Do you leave it in your pants and your mom washes it and you lost it? So we're going to talk about all of those kind of things in this class, and this is just an introduction. I want to help you start to think like an economist. So let's get you thinking like an economist. What do we value more in society? Do we profit human life, or do we value profit more? Let me rephrase that again. So, as a society, what do we value more? Do we value profit and money and success, or do we value human life? So there's some people who are saying, we value human life. Look, we're shutting down society for this pandemic because human life is the most important, even at the expense of the economy. That's some people's point of view. And some people say, well, if you force me to stay at home and I lose my job, I don't have much of a life anyways. So these are kind of the ways that economists think about things. What do we really value? Is there a dollar value we could place on human life? Sometimes I think we care more about time than we do life. If we cared about human life, then we would never have a speed limit over 10 miles an hour, Because if you get into a crash going 10 miles an hour, nobody's going to be hurt or very small. If I ran into something going 10 miles an hour, another car, there'd be some denting, but probably nobody would die, right? But if you hit another car and you're both going 70 or 80 like we do on the freeway, the odds of survival are incredibly low. So, what do we value more in society? Do we value time or do we value human life? That's what an economist thinks of, right? What do you personally value more? And of course, I've got to, make a pun with my name any chance I can. Do you value human life or time more? Some of you would think, well, of course, time's not as important as human life. Human life's the most important thing. Really? How fast do you drive? So if you valued human life, if we did as a society, maybe we wouldn't have speed limits more than 10 miles an hour ever. Because what do we really value? But I would argue that our society clearly values time. In fact, some people have an expression that time is money, right? Time equals money. And we've just all admitted that, right? We're just like, well, that's the way it is, Why'd you come to class today? Why are you doing this assignment? Why are you listening to this lecture? And you're like, well, because it's an assignment? No, because you want to graduate from high school. Why do you want to graduate from high school? Because students that have a high school diploma make more than those who don't. And you know what? Students that have college degrees make more than those who just have a high school diploma. So why would you take this class? Why would you care about getting a high school diploma? What's the real cost of college? Some people are like, I don't want to go to college. I have to pay money to go to school. I don't even like to go to school anyways. I kind of felt that way to a certain extent when I was in high school. I'm like, I don't really love school. Why would I go and pay money to go to school? But it turns out that having a college degree opens up doors and gives you better benefits. Most people that have a college degree, I say most people, there's always exceptions, but people who have a college degree have better paying jobs and there's less unemployment. Look at this chart right here with me. One of the skills we are going to do in this class is to learn how to read charts and graphs. So on one side, we're seeing median weekly earnings. That's how much a person makes per week. If you have less than a high school diploma, now these are just averages. Obviously, there's exceptions to the rule. You could always say, well, what if, or what about? That's fine. I get that. There's always outliers, right? But the data says that people who don't graduate from high school are averaging $440 per week. Now, that might sound awesome, but you can't live on that. Not here in Apple Valley, not even close. If you have a high school diploma, making more. Some college, an associate's degree, a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, or if you go even beyond a master's to like a doctorate or a professional degree like an MBA or a doctor, right? Like you want to be a doctor or a dentist or a lawyer. These are the people who are making $1,600 per week. Now look at the other side of this scale. It's saying who's unemployed. Who's unemployed? And again, the lower your education, the more likely you are to be unemployed. So what's the real cost of a high school diploma? What's the real cost of graduating or going on to college? These things will matter. They determine your success in life. I thought I would just take a minute to show you. This is public information. You can go to avusd.org. You can go right now and Google it. You can go down to human resources and you can click on this. This is a pay scale for teachers in Apple Valley Unified School District. This shows you the number of years that a person has been teaching. And this right here shows you the amount of education they have. College graduate, units beyond college graduate, like a bachelor's plus more schooling, or even a bachelor's, even a master's plus. And you notice the earning potential. It tells you how much they're averaging. Well, not averaging, I'm sorry. It's not an average. That's how much they're making. The reason I kind of used the word average was because there's taxes being taken out and there's other things that are coming out. But that's like the raw data. Like, this is how much they make per month. This is how much a teacher makes per day on the job, per day that we teach, per day. So my point is that teachers are not known as rich people. When people think, hey, I want to be rich, they don't think, hey, I'm going to be a teacher. But it's a good life if you got the education. And I'm just trying to show you the potential of how education, not just years of experience, could land you a good job. And what does it take to live a decent life right here in Apple Valley? Some of you are like, I don't want to live in Apple Valley. Hey, I get that. I really do. But if you're going to go somewhere else, it's probably going to be more expensive than Apple Valley. Some of us live in Apple Valley because it's less expensive. So I need you to start thinking about that. And here's the other thought, economically. At the bottom, you see that fine print down here? I just covered it up because I moved the cursor. But down here at the bottom of this chart, you're going to see in very fine print, these are called fringe benefits. Okay? Fringe benefits are things beyond actual money that a person gets. So if somebody's a teacher like me and you're working in the district, besides just getting money to pay bills, like, the gas bill, the car bill, the insurance, the food, electricity to turn on the lights, besides getting money to pay bills, we also get what we call fringe benefits. That's health plans, vision insurance, and here, doctor, medical insurance, life insurance. I mean, these are all the kind of things that an adult has to think about. So beyond what we're getting paid right here in actual income, there's also, people in the district are getting $17,000 worth of benefits per year. And that's the kind of stuff that you've got to consider when you're thinking about what kind of job you want to get. Is it worth going to college? Because most people who don't go to college are not going to get a job with benefits. And you might not care about benefits right now. You're not thinking about these things because you're being provided for economically at home. So what is economics? Economics classes are not like math or business classes. Economic classes are social studies classes, more like psychology, right? Because we're looking about choices and decisions and why we're making those decisions. Economics is the study of scarcity and choices. In other words, there's not an infinite amount of stuff. If there was an infinite amount of stuff, then we wouldn't have to charge people for things. We wouldn't have to use money to buy things. Everybody could have what they wanted, but there is a scarcity of things. And the more scarce something is, the more it's valued. That's what makes diamonds valuable or gold valuable, because there's a limited amount of it. So scarcity matters. And if you don't understand that, then you can't understand economics. And we, of course, have to study choices. Why did I choose to become a teacher? Why did I choose to go to college? Why do I choose to buy this kind of a car instead of that kind of a car? So there are factors that are making all of us to choose certain things. And it's figuring out why people make those choices and how decisions affect things. That's what economics is. There's always that cost versus the benefit. There's always a cost to something. People are rational, intelligent beings. And so each of us must determine if the benefits of doing something outweigh the costs. So there's a concert that I want to go to, and it costs $40 to go to that concert. But that concert is going to happen during a work day. So I have to take work off to go to that concert. So does that concert really cost $40? Well, you're like, yeah, Mr. Moore, you just said it cost $40, but maybe not. Because obviously there's the driving there. If I have a car, there's wear and tear on the car. There's the cost of gas. But if I have to take off work to go to that concert, how much money was I going to make if I went to work? Say I'm going to make $150 if I went to work, but instead of going to work, I'm paying $40 to go to this concert. Now this concert isn't costing me $40. Now I have to take the $150 I lost plus the $40 it cost me, plus the gas. Okay, now we're starting to get the real cost of what something is. And so those, again, are things that we're going to be discussing in this class. It's very, very interesting. There are things called opportunity cost. Everything we do has a cost, and it's not just the money. It's the time, it's the resources, it's the effort, it's the emotions. What is the real cost? And those are the things that encourage us to make certain decisions. Okay, so why should I graduate from high school? Why should I go to college? What's the cost of it? What's the benefits of it? Going to college is 4 years of my life, but I'm going to go get a hangout on a college campus, meet lots of cool people, have some great experiences. It's going to cost me literally $20,000 per year. That's at a cheap school. If I go to like USC or UCLA, it could cost me $50,000 per year. But when I get out with a degree, then I'm going to be able to go be a dentist and make $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 per year. So what's the cost? What's the benefit? That's what we've got to weigh when we make all these decisions in life. Okay? The importance of economics, how to distribute resources in a society, how to achieve social efficacy. Like, is it equal? Do people have a fair shot? Are people happy? Why aren't they happy? What's getting them riled up? Give info to make informed choices. Give forecasts. Is the economy going to go up? Why? Why is the economy going to be doing bad? How do we fix failures in the market? Understanding consumer behavior. If you want to produce some type of product, what do you need to think about? Marketing strategies, and how do we convince people to buy something they don't really need? What's the opportunity costs of decisions? These are the things that we talk about in an economics class. Okay? Key ideas for understanding economics is incentives. What motivates people to do things? Now, there's this idea, I don't know if you guys ever heard of this before, but there are sticks and carrots in society. And it goes back to this old time where people used to, use donkeys. And so you can either hit the donkey and make him go, right? That's a stick. Or you can put a carrot in front of them and they're motivated to move forward. So are people doing things out of, motivation or out of fear? That's kind of the idea. People respond in predictable ways. And that's the idea of incentives. And that's what drives all of us. That's why I go to work. That's why you're going to go to work. There's incentives. Why do you go to this class? Why are you doing good in this class, but not doing good in that class? Obviously, there's no incentives there. So these are the human decision choices, and there's always unintended consequences. We want a certain outcome, so we put a plan into action, but sometimes we don't get the outcome we want because of exterior factors or unknown variables, the unintended consequences. And that's one of the things I'm going to try to use those words a lot, because oftentimes there are unintended consequences. We think we're doing one thing, but in reality, it's not going the way we planned because of these external factors or these unknown variables. Remember, and this is one of the points I'm trying to make today, there are two different ways to approach the study of an economy. There's the macroeconomics, looking at the big picture, and there's the microeconomics, how individuals are affected by things and how individuals affect things, okay? The affected and effected, right? People respond to incentives in predictable ways. So let's try thinking like an economist. Do safety features make us drive safer? Or do we drive faster than we should because we feel safe? So here's an example a college professor taught me when I was in an economics class. He said, do seatbelts make us drive safer? And the obvious thought right away is yes, right? They make us drive safer. Airbags, does that make us drive safer? And he said, no, I don't think it does. The more safety features we put in a vehicle, the faster we drive because we feel safe. He said, you want people to drive safe? Here's what you do. Strap a javelin onto every steering wheel. Instead of having airbags, put a javelin on every steering wheel. So if people get in a wreck, that javelin's going to go right through their heart. He said, do you know what? People would stop cutting each other off in the road. People would stop driving like maniacs and driving crazy. If you had a javelin pointing at your heart and you made the wrong mistake, you would probably drive a lot safer. So I know that sounds silly and ridiculous, but he was trying to get us to think like an economist. Okay? So he wasn't really suggesting we should put a javelin in the steering wheel, but he was trying to get us to think like an economist. To review, economics is the social science concerned with the effective use of scarce resources to achieve maximum satisfaction of economic needs and wants. Oh, we could talk about needs and wants forever. In fact, that's one of the things I'm going to do over the next couple of weeks. I'm going to talk about you trying to really hone in what you need versus what you want. If you're going to be successful as an individual, you need to be able to determine needs versus wants, right? Economics is the science of scarcity. Economics is the study of choices and decisions. Remember, scarcity means we have unlimited wants, but limited resources, right? And since we are unable to have everything we want, we must make choices. Make choices on how we will use our resources. Now, this is very much macroeconomics, right? Looking at countries and what they produce, right? What they're good at. When we think of a place like Saudi Arabia, we think oil. When we think of a place like Argentina, we might think beef or soybeans. When we think about Russia, we might think about petroleum products. Where's all the coal coming out of the world? Where do they grow coffee? These are the kind of things that makes the world go round. Money makes the world go round. And that's a macroeconomic thing. We are, not today, but we are going to get into supply and demand and what creates a surplus or a shortage of things. What drives the price versus the quantity of an object or item being made. And we're going to try to help you understand how to read charts and graphs so that you can be a functioning member of the economy. Can you get a job being an economist? Is there actual jobs? Yes. You could work in finance. You could work on Wall Street. You could do day trading. You could teach economics as a professor at a university. You could be a statistician or an accountant. There are lawyers that hire economists because when it comes down to it, what really matters is money, right? You could be a personal financial advisor. You could be, helping people to manage their accounts. You could work at a bank. There's a lot of things that could be done with an economics major. I have a learning goal each week, and the learning goal this week is this: students will understand that productive resources are limited. Therefore, people cannot have all the goods and services they want. As a result, they must choose some things and give up others. That is the end of these notes. There's, like on all of my notes, there are some great resources, crash course YouTube videos. I've also brought in a lot of Vox videos, or there's some reports on debt and reports on and how things work economically. And also there is a city, We the Economy, and I'll assign some of those in class. But I want you to know that there's some great review videos. Thank you for being here. This is the first week of our economics class. It's week 19 of the school year. Thank you for joining me, and we'll see you next week as we dive into some personal finance and budgeting and money management ideas. We're definitely going to focus in on personal finance and microeconomics at the beginning of this class, and then kind of get into more of the global side of it later. Thanks, and have a great day.